It was November 2007 when an international flight from a major European airline embarked on one of its most challenging routes, a transatlantic link from Madrid to Quito, Ecuador. The journey promised to be complex, not only because of the distance, but also due to the challenge of landing at an airport located over 2,800 meters above sea level, with a short runway and changing weather conditions that had complicated more than one flight in the past. The Airbus A340-600, nicknamed Miguel de Unamuno, took off from Madrid around 11:30 a.m. with more than 345 passengers on board and an experienced crew in command. Everything seemed to proceed normally as they flew over the Atlantic Ocean, with the crew staying calm, coordinating with air traffic controllers, and preparing passengers for the final descent. However, as they approached Quito, the weather began to change unexpectedly. Clouds lowered, rain became intermittent, and variable winds battered the runway. Visibility dropped to just a few kilometers, and fog began to envelop the city. The airport was operating with its main runway, which, although slightly over 3 kilometers long, practically allowed less than 2,700 meters for landing due to terrain and safety restrictions. The plane began its approach following the ILS guidance system, a procedure that normally guarantees precision and safety. But in this case, the challenging location and bad weather complicated the maneuver. A few minutes before landing, the crew decided to disconnect the autopilot to perform the final approach visually, attempting a maneuver that would allow them to land earlier and gain more distance to brake. However, this decision proved crucial. The descent was too fast and steep, and shortly after, the warning system alerted them to an excessive descent speed. Despite this, the captain decided to continue, trusting his experience and their ability to control the situation. The impact with the runway was strong and sudden. The tires burst, the landing gear suffered severe damage, and some critical systems began to fail. The engine thrust reversers did not respond, and the automatic braking system stopped working. The crew attempted manual braking, but the combination of a wet runway, tailwind, and damaged systems prevented the aircraft from stopping in time. The plane slid off the runway at a speed of more than 160 kilometers per hour, crossing antennas and safety zones until stopping about 230 meters further on, with the fuselage tilted and the engines damaged. It was a brutal impact, but miraculously there was no fire or loss of life. At that moment, everyone's attention turned to evacuation. The crew deployed the slides and passengers began to exit amid the rain and darkness, with adrenaline and relief mixed together. Despite the tension, the evacuation proceeded in an orderly manner and without major incidents. What had started as a routine flight ended with a landing that nearly became a disaster. What factors led to this chain of events? Was it a bad decision, a technical error, or a combination of both? This would be analyzed in the hours and days to come, but at that moment, the only clear thing was that the line between control and tragedy had narrowed to the maximum. After the violent impact with the runway, the plane began to slide forcefully. The automatic braking systems were inoperative, and the crew had to react quickly to try to control the situation. Despite the efforts of the captain and his co-pilots, manual braking proved ineffective due to the wet runway and the activation of the anti-skid system, which locked some wheels, limiting traction. The plane moved at an alarming speed, crossing the runway lights and antennas of the landing system, elements designed to guide and protect, but that at that moment could not prevent the aircraft from overrunning the runway limits. Inside the cockpit, the tension was palpable. The crew faced a critical scenario, and every second counted. The captain, aware of the danger, ordered preparations for an emergency evacuation while trying to maintain control of the aircraft as best as possible. Passengers, meanwhile, barely understood the severity of the situation. Some felt the impact. Others experienced the sudden braking and the noise of the bursting tires. But the silence after the crash and the darkness of the night made it impossible to know for sure what had happened. The flight attendants began to act, maintaining calm and preparing passengers for what was to come. The fuselage was tilted to one side due to damage to the landing gear. Despite the adverse conditions and the rain that was beginning to intensify, there were no signs of fire or smoke, an element that undoubtedly helped avoid a greater tragedy. Emergency lights activated automatically, illuminating the aisles and clearly marking the exits. The engines, damaged by the impact, remained running in safety mode, increasing anxiety inside the cabin, since any spark could trigger a fire. The crew maintained constant communication with passengers, giving precise instructions to keep calm and prepare for evacuation. Their training and crisis experience played a vital role in preventing panic. Meanwhile, from the control tower and the airport emergency team, vehicles were quickly dispatched to assist in the operation. Ambulances, firefighters, and specialized personnel arrived within minutes, navigating through debris and obstacles scattered across the runway. The aircraft remained still, but the sense of urgency was felt in every passing second. The risk of the situation worsening was imminent, and the priority was to evacuate everyone safely and quickly. Thus, amid the rain and tension, the crew prepared to give the order no one wanted to hear, but everyone knew was indispensable: evacuate the aircraft. Once the plane came to a complete stop, the captain immediately gave the order to evacuate the aircraft. The cabin crew, trained for such situations, acted quickly and precisely. Emergency slides were deployed at the main exits, especially through the front right door, which was the safest given the plane's tilt and the external conditions. Flight attendants coordinated the passengers, who, although nervous and confused, followed the instructions without causing panic. The rain continued, and the darkness made the atmosphere even more tense. But the crew's discipline and calm were key to maintaining order. Some passengers had difficulty descending due to the severe impact and the fuselage's rocking, but no one suffered serious injuries during the evacuation. Only 2 crew members sustained minor injuries as a result of the swift maneuvers and effort to control the exit. Emergency services arrived within minutes, surrounded the plane, and began assisting the evacuees. Their quick response was crucial in preventing any major complications, such as fire or secondary damage. Although the plane suffered severe damage to its landing gear, engines, and structure, fortunately, there were no fatalities or serious injuries. Passengers were moved to safe areas and carefully attended to. This outcome, while marked by moments of great tension, is considered a success under the circumstances, given the complexity and danger of the accident. In the following hours, the airport temporarily closed operations while inspections were conducted and the affected runway was cleared. Iberia and aviation authorities quickly mobilized to ensure the safety of passengers and crew, as well as to initiate the relevant investigation. The official investigation of the accident began immediately, led by the General Directorate of Civil Aviation of Ecuador, with the collaboration of experts from Spain and the aircraft manufacturer. They analyzed data from the black box, weather reports, and testimonies from the crew and passengers. Investigators concluded that the primary factor in the incident was an unstabilized approach under difficult conditions. The runway was wet due to recent rains, and the tailwind further complicated braking during landing. Additionally, the plane touched down at an excessive speed and a steeper descent angle than recommended, causing a hard impact and significant damage to the landing gear and tires. This strong impact resulted in the loss of functionality in key systems, such as thrust reversers and automatic braking, severely limiting the ability to stop the aircraft. It was also determined that the decision to disconnect the autopilot and switch to a visual approach in the final phase was a factor that increased risk, as the crew lost some control over the descent's stability. However, no prior mechanical failures or technical problems causing the loss of control were found. The crew acted according to the available protocols, although the lack of a specific procedure for landings in Quito under adverse conditions left room for human error. The final report recommended that Iberia and other airlines operating at airports with similar characteristics strengthen training on unstabilized approaches and improve decision-making in high-pressure situations. It also suggested implementing measures to verify and improve runway friction when wet, especially in places with variable climates. This accident, despite no human casualties, served as a hard lesson for commercial aviation, emphasizing the importance of respecting operational limits and the need for clear protocols in complex scenarios. Since then, Iberia has reinforced its procedures and adopted new policies to prevent similar incidents, improving flight safety and passenger confidence.